for us, if you don't mind. We're going to expand this out to our panel. Elliot Williams, CNN legal analyst, former federal prosecutor. Mark McKinnon, former advisor to George W. Bush and John McCain. Ashley Allison, former Obama White House senior policy advisor. And Scott Jennings, former political director for Senator Mitch McConnell, both of them CNN political commentators. Welcome to all of you. Thank you very much for being here. Mark McKinnon, appreciate you bringing the hat from out west to come hang out with us today. Look, I actually want to start a big picture with you because I think what Aaron just said there crystallized it a little bit for me, because in these past moments of incredible economic testing for our country, we have always looked, and I've been in Washington covering what our policymakers were going to do in response. And you saw extraordinary responses to COVID, right? Those stimulus checks, things I never thought I would see Congress do. I remember watching from the House gallery when House Republicans and some Democrats together sank the TARP bank rescue bill. They watched the market fall off a cliff. Everyone panicked, and by the next day, they were pulling it back together again to try to rescue Americans' money, quite frankly. The opposite is happening here. This is being caused by the people in charge.
I thought that was a great line, that the policy is the poison in this case. I remember 2007, 2008, when John McCain suspended his presidential campaign to come to Washington to deal with the emergency, which is interesting compared to what Trump was doing this weekend and how he dealt with it optically. But the interesting thing, I think, here is the long game here. I mean, we can debate, was this reciprocal? Was it about trade imbalance, what have you? But what is Donald Trump really all about what's the long game? And it's about this notion that we're going to dial the clock back. His presidential campaign was really about, other campaigns have been about embracing the future. He embraced the past. So we're going to, people are afraid of the future and technology and immigration. We're going to go back to a time when, and he promised to bring back manufacturing. I think that's the long game. He has this notion, it's sort of like Mexicans are going to pay for the wall, that somehow magically, and in the magic, the magic potion is tariffs. He thinks we'll bring manufacturing back somehow to America. And I just think that that's misguided thinking on a grand scale.
Well, certainly his current vice president used to think that. I mean, he's someone who's from a community that was devastated by some of the free trade policies that were put in place. But even he, before he was Donald Trump's running mate, would say, these jobs are not coming back. You can't rewind the clock. Scott Jennings, I think big picture, my question here is, this president has been trying to lay at Joe Biden's feet various economic problems that he inherited. Fine. Fair. Now, it does seem to me that one way or the other, this is Donald Trump's economy now. He can, if the manufacturing comes back, he can get credit for that later. But if we don't bounce back from this, if we end up in a depression, that's on Donald Trump too.
Well, yeah, this is his plan. He's been talking about tariffs for a very long time. He believes in it. And right now, according to the Treasury Secretary, we have over 50 countries who've already come to the table and want to engage with the United States and talk about how we can have a more fair free trade relationship with them. That's a good thing, number one. Number two, this is only part of the deal. The other part of the deal is making the tax cuts permanent. And maybe even, if I were them, cut the capital gains tax and offer to slash the corporate tax rate and see if you can get any Democrats to join, because I'm amused by the Democrats who are all of a sudden free traders and for lower taxes. Well, if you've got Democrats who'd like to reduce the taxation on corporate activity, well, let's see how serious they are. Cut capital gains, slash the corporate income tax rate. I find it amusing that everybody talks about the 2008 crash and the COVID. No one ever mentions that in 2022, the S&P was down 20, the NASDAQ was down 33, and I don't remember any of these Democrats being in hysterics when the market fully crashed in 2022. So I think Republicans are content
to let the president. Well, what would you
ascribe
the reason for that happening
to? I assume it was some combination of terrible fiscal policy and lack of confidence in the president. And so,
I mean, they're sometimes related, but in this case, this was a very specific action with a very specific reaction.
And the market was flat today.
I do. In the end, it was. You're right about that. But man, was it a roller coaster of a ride.
It's down 400 points. That's not flat.
Did you see the percentages? I assume you can calculate percentages. I mean, 0.91, 0.10, 0.23. We're not talking about.
And there was a split decision. We should note the NASDAQ is slightly in the green. I just want to take you back, though, to the campaign briefly, because I think it's worth noting what Donald Trump said was going to happen if he didn't win the White House and compare it to what we've seen for the last week. Let's watch.
If you want your incomes to plummet, your net worth to collapse, your tax bills to soar, and your jobs to totally disappear, that doesn't sound too good. Then vote for Kamala, your tax queen. He had a great stock bump. Can you imagine if Kamala won? You would go down to a 1929 style depression. If Kamala wins, you are 3 days away from the start of a 1929-style economic depression.
I mean, the reality here, Scott, Donald Trump has raised taxes.
We're not in a depression. I mean,
I didn't say we were.
I didn't say we were. Promising that we're not. We may not even be in a recession. Although I would point out the last time we went into a recession, we spent an entire year redefining the word recession because I guess a Democrat was in the White House. I think we're going to see how this plays out. I really do think these countries coming to the table and the Treasury Secretary engaging with Japan, I think you got to have to give it some time. That's what Donald Trump is counseling, and that's the way the Republicans are going to treat it.
Ashley?
I mean, the clock is ticking, okay? I hear you. And, like, as an American, I hope that this does not end in the disaster that it feels like has happened over the last 5 days. I wasn't an economics major in college, so I try and listen to economists. And it just seems so strange that the only person, maybe you now, but is Donald Trump is like the exception to the rule. Like, he can make up these financial policies and just apply them, and it doesn't seem to be matching. So we'll see. Like, if this is going to be a long haul, 18 months is really all that he has, because in 18 months we have midterms, and quite honestly, even before that, because some of the folks who are frontliners, they might get primaried on your side before that. So
they got way less than 18 months.
They got that's what I'm saying. They got about 6 months. And so the question is, when you say, like, are Democrats, the question really is, are Republicans might end up siding with some Democrats more so than Democrats siding with Republicans?
Let me just briefly answer that. I think this puts pressure on Republicans to get the rest of it done. Making the tax cuts permanent and all of the things they want to do in the reconciliation bill, the time to act is now, because it all is supposed to work in concert. So letting this linger out, not great. The Senate's already in the House for moving on the budget framework. So
I was going to say, I think that's what the White House is telling those House Republicans that are currently holding out and causing problems.
To your point, Ashley, it's not just the economists. It's the editorial page of the Wall Street Journal. It is the CEO of J.P. Morgan Chase. It is Bill Ackman, a billionaire supporter of Donald Trump. It's senators, Republican senators, Chuck Grassley and Ted Cruz and Rand Paul. The point is, embracing tariffs is certainly an economic policy. It's a plan, and maybe it'll work, maybe it won't. But it's the uncertainty that the markets are responding to. Yeah. And quite frankly, the difference between what was coming out of the Treasury Secretary and the president's own economic advisor in the last day, it seems that they're not even in agreement about what they're saying about where things are going.
Well, and Scott, there may be 50 countries calling, but that doesn't include China. I think China right now is saying, hold my beer. This is a huge strategic opening for China.
And to that point,
maybe it's a huge strategic opening for us. I mean, part of the deal here could be getting the rest of the world in league with us and in alignment against them. They are not our friend. They are not a good actor, and they need to be punished. And I frankly think the working class of America is glad the president is standing up to China, truthfully.
Okay, so let me put this question to you, Aaron Burnett, because this pops up in the letter that Jamie Dimon wrote to his shareholders today. And he said, and this speaks to a little bit of how Scott was kind of framing the world, right, taking on China. He says, America first is fine as long as it doesn't end up being America alone. If the Western world's military and economic alliances were to fragment, America itself would inevitably weaken over time. It is extremely important to recognize that security and economics are interconnected. Economic warfare has caused military warfare in the past. I mean, those are incredibly high stakes.
Incredibly high stakes. And in that context, you got to think about where we are. I mean, you have a mixed ending to the day. Who knows what that actually means? Over the past 3 days, you're looking at what is probably, other than the 1987 crash, the worst 3-day drop since World War II, right? So that's why you're getting all of these analogies to those times and to those tariffs, right? Tariffs going from on average 2.5% to 3% to 20% overnight. If Trump goes through with what he said, that puts you all the way back to where we were in Smoot-Hawley, 100 years ago, Casey. Mm-hmm. And that's the context. That's what you're hearing from people. That fear. And exactly what Marcus said, and Scott's pointing out with China, really, ultimately, you can talk all you want about the 50 countries coming to negotiate, and that's good, right? You get some good things out of that, good. But, Vietnam's not going to move the needle for the United States. The Amber and Heard Islands are definitely not going to move the needle if they're one of the 50. But putting all jokes aside, it does only matter what China is going to do, what the EU is going to do, and what Jamie Dimon said there. You hear it from the Prime Minister of Canada talking about fighting. You're hearing about your allies saying that the way that the world has changed. That's really what's at stake, as you point out, Casey.
Yeah, no, that's a very, very sharp way to put it. Aaron, so grateful to have you on the show today. Thank you so much.
Great
of course, we'll see you out front at 7 p.m.